All right, so we're looking at modeling a watershed. We're still looking at the standard E.8.9A.7, explain the interconnected relationship between surface water and groundwater. Our big essential question is, how is the watershed connected to surface water and groundwater? So a watershed is an area of land that drains into a specific water body. Watersheds drain rainfall and snowmelt into streams and rivers. The gravity helps to guide the path that water takes across the landscape from a higher elevation to a lower elevation. And then the watershed consists of surface water and all the underlying groundwater. And each watershed is going to be separated from other watersheds by a divide. And so a divide is the elevated boundary between areas that are drained by different elevated features, and we call those a drainage divide. So the Mississippi River, which we are all very familiar with living here in Mississippi, is the biggest watershed in the United States. And it starts as a trickle at Lake Itasaka in Minnesota, and after traveling 2,350 miles, pours into the Gulf of Mexico near New Orleans. Now, what does this really mean to us? So the best way for us to understand this description of this watershed is for us to create a watershed. And that's what we're going to do today. We are going to model a watershed by creating it. And so even if you're at home, you can do this activity. You're going to need some supplies. So let's look at what supplies we actually need. So for this, very simple, everyone should have some of these things at home. We need a sheet of copy paper. We need 4 markers, different colors, and water-based so that they are able to do things, and a spray bottle with water. Okay, so now that you can see me, all right, you can see that I have a sheet of paper. And the first thing we're going to do, and it's super easy, is we're going to take this paper and we are going to just crumble it up, okay? And everyone loves this part, right? We're just going to crumble this paper up. So now I have this beautiful crumbled piece of paper. Then, after you crumble your paper, you're just going to pull it apart, okay? And I'm not going to flatten it, okay? It should look how uneven it is. Okay, it's very uneven. Has all of these different features on it, okay? And so I'm going to use these features to demonstrate my watershed. Now, we like to call this a relief map. It's nice and it's textured, and I can see some good topography here. All right, so here we go. And then I have 4 colors. Now I chose some distinctive colors so it'd be easy for y'all to see it. I'm just going to pick one of these colors, okay? And the first thing that I'm going to do is, you can see that there's some tops of my peaks, okay? So these are my mountains, right? And so I am going to color all of these peaks. And it's the highest part of your paper. So like, just touch it and it just colors in. And it's gonna take a minute. So I'm gonna color all of them. You color all of yours. Okay, so now you can see I colored mine red, and that is the top of the mountains, okay? So that's the highest elevation for each little region or area. That's the highest area. Now I'm going to pick a different color, and I'm going to use this color to color the lowest part in the paper. And that's going to be these. Let me do a little section here so that you can see when I mean lowest part. These are going to be our valleys, okay? So the lowest part, that's the lowest part. And so I'm going to go through and I'm going to color in these little lines to show the lowest parts of the valley. So it's the bottom of the mountains, the little crevices you see on your paper. Okay, so you can see how I'm doing that. And it's going to take me a few minutes to get the rest of mine. So I'm going to go ahead and color the rest of them in. Okay, so now you can see I have all of the really dark here, okay? And this is where all the streams, it's the very bottom of the mountains, streams, rivers, can be lakes, all those things. So it looking pretty colorful. Now I'm going to pick a different color, okay? And I'm going to choose blue. It's going to be like my rain, all right? So now I'm going to draw where water is going to fall down. How is it going to go? So when I look at my beautiful relief map that I have going on, I have some pretty distinctive areas here, and I'm going to turn it so that it's a better view here. So this is the highest elevation here, and I know that on this side, so remember we call these drainage divides, the highest elevation. So the water is going to travel. It's going to rain down there. Water is going to travel in these directions, right? It's going to go down this side of the mountain. And then on the other side, it's going to go down that way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw showing which way my water is flowing. Okay, so my water is going to come down this way, and my water is going to come down this way. And I'm going to do that in several areas. So I'm just going to show where my water is falling from the mountain and how it's flowing. And I'm going to do that in all the places. So all the places that I have this area. So I have this mountain, okay? The water is going to go from the top to the bottom. Top to the bottom. Top to the bottom. And I'm going to do that for all the places. So you do that for all yours. Okay, so you can see all the places where I believe the water is going to fall from the top of the elevation down to so from the red to the brown where my rivers are, okay, or my streams or my lakes. So I'm going to take the color that I haven't used, and that's green. And now I'm going to add my house and my school. And so you can put that anywhere on your map, okay? Because how does the watershed affect where you live? How does the watershed affect your school? Okay, and so when we look at that, we're going to look at how this water actually flows. So I'm going to pick some places for my house and my school. Okay, so I picked my house, okay, and it can be anywhere on the map. It doesn't have to be exactly where you live. It's just make believe there. So you see my house, and I live a good distance from this school, so I'm going to put my school in a different location. All right, I'm going to add a house in a different location. Maybe this is my friend's house. Okay, I'm just put some houses in a few places just so I know that people live there. Okay, so I drew some houses in some few places. All right, so now, and they're just little squares. Okay, nice and squares. So this is where we take the spray bottle. We're going to take the spray bottle and we're going to use it like rain, okay? And you don't want to drench your watershed. You want to just squirt a few things on it and see what happens. So I'm going to make it rain on my, I'm just going to go squirt, squirt, squirt. Okay. And then maybe one more time. And then as the water flows down, okay, some things are happening here. And I'm just going to let it do its thing for a second. And you watch yours to see what's happening here. And you should start seeing how that your colors are bleeding down, okay? And that water might be pooling in some areas. All right, so you can see how the water, if you look, the water has pooled down, okay, and it's bled. My marker is nice and fuzzy, so it's showing that the water has moved down. And then on this section, you can still see, let me get a better glimpse here. Let me turn it a little bit. You can really see how all of this has gotten really fuzzy and the water has pooled down where the house is. It's green, it's all smudged, so the water just moved in that area. So you can see how the water is going from the highest elevation to the lowest elevation and how it's flowing down the mountain. All right, so now that we created our watershed, we got to experience the watershed and see what it looks like. And I'm sure as you let your map sit there, you can see how the water is still making some movements and some changes to your map. So I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to discuss these 3 questions with your elbow partner, okay? So what is a watershed? How does water flow in a watershed? How does the watershed connect to surface water and groundwater? So take 3 minutes, have a quick discussion, and then we're going to discuss it together. All right, so now that you had an opportunity to discuss these questions, what is a watershed? What did your group or your partner, your elbow partner say was a watershed? Ooh, I like that statement. Leland, that's a good statement. So Leland said it's the area of land where the water flows into the same place. So yes, it's an area of land where the water all flows to the same place. And so how does water flow in a watershed? So how is that water flowing from a general area to the same place? How is it flowing? Okay, Ariana. So Ariana is saying that watershed, the water flows in a watershed, it flows downhill, which she is correct. So it's going from the highest elevation and it's flowing downhill to the lowest elevation. Very good. And then how does the watershed connect to surface water and groundwater? So how are they all connected? Oh yeah, because now when we look at that, and this is very important, and I like how some of y'all are telling me some of those vocabulary terms, a surface water is on the surface, right? And so for the watershed, it is the water that's flowing downhill on the surface, but not all of that water is flowing downhill. So some of that water is being absorbed through the ground or infiltrated and is going into our groundwater. And so it's a huge water cycle connection. Okay, so we have it rains and the water is going to flow down and from the highest elevation to the lower elevation, which is our watershed, and that's our surface water. And then, but not all of that water flows downhill and joins the streams and rivers and lakes. Some of it is absorbed in the ground to groundwater. And this shows us how it's all connected in the big picture. Very good.